front and center.
Right. Perfect.
Hey, Go Knucklers, it's Flo. Welcome back to another Go Knuckle Talk with Flo. And then this is STS 30. Hey, before I introduce my co-host and our guest, don't forget when you're on YouTube, what do? Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, like the video, and leave a comment. And then real quick, hey guys, I earlier this morning I posted that we're looking for high school sweethearts for our Valentine's episode. So if you want to be on the show, or if you know you can suggest couples, please PM us. Anyway, this chick here has been out in the wilderness. You know, Grizzly. What's that dude's name from the 70s?
Grizzly
Adams. Yeah. Let me introduce you to Grizzly Lisa Nolan Hafner.
Woo! Hi, Flo.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm glad to be back.
You glad you can be shitting in the toilet now? Sorry, guys.
Well, I'm glad to not have to go outside to a little hut for my bathroom. So, yeah.
Well, who do we have?
We have a repeater. It's the Lisa show tonight. Lisa and Lisa. Hi,
Lisa and
welcome.
the Colt Jam.
Yes, Lisa Lloyd Kersh, our beloved high school teacher. So, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be a repeater. It was so fun the last time. I got so much joy from that with friends and sharing and reconnecting with you guys and so many people. So it's great. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I mean, welcome to, this is our new segment. I think you're the third or fourth. And by the way, we do have a classmate who did message me through Messenger, and she figured out what STS stands for, but we're not going to let anyone else know. You guys just going to have to reach out to us, with, what you think it is, or if you know what it is. But anyway, Mrs. Kersh, hey, so you went from child development, and then how did you, I assume, yes, you became an assistant principal. So how did that come about?
Well, it's when I was teaching that, I know that was the class. That's a class both of you had that I taught. I taught a variety of classes in that family and consumer science. Loved it. And, I think I mentioned to you the other day that had always been my plan. My dream is to be a teacher, that I loved what I was doing. I enjoyed the people I worked with. I enjoyed my students. And, I'm a strong believer, because I see this in children still as I work in schools. I believe that we all do have some inner force or drive or call to do certain things. And I don't know why, but I had wanted to be a teacher since I actually, even before I was in school. That's all I ever wanted to do. So there are many things I've done as far as teaching, but I was happy doing my job. And if y'all will remember, back when you were in high school, they called administrators deans rather than assistant principal. And I think actually the way it worked, or was arranged at that time, it was principal, assistant principal, and 4 deans, one for every class. And so there was an opening for that job position, which I was not, it wasn't even on my radar. And the principal, who at the time was Jerry Don George, and he came and he asked me, he said, I would like for you to, I want you to apply for this job. And I said, oh, no, all I want to do is teach. That's all I want to do. I said, I'm happy where I am. And, people asked me later, why do you think he asked you to do that? And I think maybe because even though you take the skill set of a teacher and then you move into administration, it's totally different. It's totally different. And so I said, no, I'm happy. And, if y'all recall, what I taught all juniors and seniors. And this was a job for freshman dean. And so the dean's main things is what we did. Michael, I told you I didn't like it at all that one year. That was a year. And I just was determined to make it through. And because my job, what it was dealing with discipline and attendance. Those are the two main 90% of my day. And I, as a teacher, I just didn't, I had very few discipline problems. I didn't have discipline problems with my students. And so, but I think that's the reason that he asked me, because that's just the way the old system worked a lot of times. That if you, back in those days, several years ago, if you had, had good discipline in your class, then the principal's like, they can handle an administrator position. So what I did, I went from classroom teaching with juniors and seniors to freshmen. 120 of the students were repeat freshmen. Because high school is the first time you go by credits. People, the kids, they get passed on and again and again and again. Well, 120 of them really should have been sophomores. And so you add that to my number, and I had over 400 students. And we also had to chase them down, figure out why they weren't there. And so there were just, I wasn't used to such overwhelming big needs and issues among students that first year. And it was really hard because you're dealing with a lot of negatives. I would say maybe in about March to April, I transitioned because I'd gotten to know a lot of those kids. And the good thing I liked about that system, you moved with them. So I got to be a sophomore the next year. But I stayed with that group of kids until they graduated, until they came through. So I went through the whole process with them, all activities that they did. And so I did 4 years as a dean, where we went through, and I loved it by the sophomore and junior year. By the time they were seniors, it was like they painted my car in the parking lot. Several of the kids, and they put a big circle over where the driver's seat is, and they wrote "Mama Kersh." And it's I can see some of those people today that they've gone up there, a lot of them. And I said, you know what? I still can remember your grandmother's phone number. I called it so many times.
That's funny. Yeah.
It's different. It's just different. And as I reflected before I actually made the decision, I said, well, my big thing is I really feel like I have a role teaching where I can help. I've got 150 kids, and it actually was Coach Steve Parr. He said, now you'll have a whole class of 300 kids you can help. And so he said that you'll get to know. And so that's true, that, the circle widens, and it does. But, and so it's gone on up. I did that for 4 years, and then we had a new principal come in. And I still didn't feel quite ready to do or apply for the principal job. And so I stayed an assistant principal for 4 years under a new principal. And his system was different. And so I learned a lot from him and did that. So 8 years as assistant principal. And then the year after, when Mr. Shipley was his name, when he left, I applied for the principal job. And believe it or not, in that day, and I'll tell you, just really still today, it's a little bit like that. West Texas being really conservative, and people's mindset on the role of a principal, as kind of being the heavy on discipline, and that's way changed now. But then there were only 2 female principals in either the North region or the South. And y'all remember in football, UIL, sometimes we would go with the North, sometimes we would go with the South. There was one other female principal in the North region when we were with, she was in Hereford, and then there was one at Friendship. And so it still was kind of a boys club, but that changed, it evolved, and I really enjoyed the role. So anyway, Flo, that's kind of the way that I got to that. And
okay, I mean, we're done. You just, no, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. But I do want to go back to, you said 120 kids were left from the freshmen, and they stayed for the next class. That's 400 plus. That's roughly about a third, right, of the of that year class. So you mentioned you went back to 300. So that each kid, once they got received their credits, were they able to move back up to the?
Yes.
Because I don't remember our class, we lose over 100 plus kids.
You Lisa? Know what? Yeah, what I've found and what I see now, and I'm going to back up a little bit, because just to tell you on how it works and some of the things we did, because that's a problem if they don't have a lot of motivation, because everything's about, they're still freshmen, and a lot of them had the required number of credits even as at semester of their freshman year, but they weren't allowed to move until the next year. They only moved classes once. Well, I changed that as principal. We changed the board requirement as a motivation for those second year freshmen to get their credits, because there were a lot of privileges, because things had changed. We had a freshman center when I was at the high school. The freshman center, and when you're in the freshman center, you can't leave campus for lunch. And so we built in a lot of motivation, but we also promoted at semesters for just that one class. So if they got their credits, and that's what we use, I mean, like, look, you're half a credit away, but at semester you can be a sophomore. And so we did that, and because it's a problem when they, when they lack some motivating factor to move. This year, because I've worked consecutively in the field of education. This is my 47th year. I figured it up the other day. And
wow.
Damn, that's older than us.
I know.
You wish.
And so, so I was telling someone the other day, it was one of my teachers that I work with now, but 47 years. And I started, like I said, at 22 years old. I was barely 22 when I started teaching. I think we talked about that a little last time. And
remember how young you were.
Yes. And I'm so glad that I never missed a year, because in education, in the field of education, things change so quickly, and you can get behind and not know about programs. And I think that's one thing that motivates me, is just, and I feel like it keeps me young too, because I know what's going on in schools. I know the challenges. I have the utmost respect, but within that 47 years, I've actually been in 7 different positions. Starting with teaching, and then the assistant principal, I lumped that together, principal. And then my last year with Plainview ISD, I was curriculum director for all of the campuses, just oversaw curriculum. And then I was hired by TEA to go into schools that the schools were, they're not acceptable. They are on a list from the state. And if they don't have that corrective action, they can actually close the school down, fire the staff, all of that. But I was a person, they had to have a person lead, turnaround, or change. And I always thought it was kind of like this. I don't know if y'all ever saw the old show that used to be on called Restaurant Impossible. And it was kind of like School Impossible, but it actually not near to that degree. But my job was to go in and work, assist the principal, teachers, staff to do turnaround. And they did training for us. And I love that job. And I still work in schools. Not and they don't now. If they hire me, it's usually just because I have some areas they would like to have a consultant on. So I've formed a company, instructional coaching, 4K instructional coaching, and so I go in to schools and work. But what would y'all have heard me talk about the most is I also do another job, and I work with Texas Teachers Alternative Certification. And what that is, I've worked with them now for 12 years or so, and I have about 35 teachers that are assigned to me. And this is the alternative certification program. If you have a college degree, you can, and you want to become a teacher, you can get into this program, and there's coursework you do. Plus, you have a field supervisor or a coach like I am, and I go into their classes and watch them teach, make suggestions. That's why I'm in so many schools. I go in probably about 30 a month. And what they do, we just watch, and I go all the way from pre-K 3-year-olds to high school, and in every kind of school. I have all the alternative certification people with Texas Teachers in Lubbock. I have all their schools. I have Cooper. I have Friendship. I've gone to schools almost all the way to Oklahoma, to New Mexico. And so there's a lot of driving, but I love it because I just go into classes for a class period, watch them, make suggestions. And I'm so proud of these teachers when they get their certification. And I'll tell you, this year I have 35 and they are all good. They're all good. They're really receptive to coaching. And so when I hear complaints about teachers in schools, I just like to send the message. There are really some good ones out there. And I've had a few. I've had one that I just, I said, like, look, surely you can find another job. They were not cut out to teach, and they didn't like it. It was just they probably, I don't know why they enrolled in the program, but that's one out of, I've had over 400 now teachers I've worked with. And going back to what I talked to about your influence, as you move in position in teaching, right now, the way I feel like the biggest impact I can have on helping children, kids, students is by helping their teachers. And so I work primarily now with principals, with teachers, because, and the main thing teachers, they need, the ones I work with are just reassurance. They need confidence built, but I should be. The other day I thought about this because I was in a really advanced class, like AP Calculus, that the teacher was teaching. I thought I should be the smartest person in the world because I watch all these teachers and they teach something different every time I go, all grade levels, but I learn a lot from them too. But that's the job that I'm mainly doing right now. So,
and so that's your consulting firm. I want to go back to your first year as a dean. Did you have moments where you thought, "Oh my goodness, what have I got myself into?"
Many, every day. Hey, that's Lisa. In fact, what I was thinking, that started my walking. I mean, it was almost like Forrest Gump. One day I just started running and I ran and ran, but that was my debrief. I would go home, but I was, how it is. You also can work out things in your mind when you're out in nature, you're physical, you're working. That a lot of my problem solving is a result of that. And that's why I think it's so important that people do have exercise, have hobbies, have things outside, because you've got to get away from it. And I think a lot of it that first year, it was real, because I would have students, that had issues, problems that before when I was teaching. But this one, I had the most high needs kids that I was working with often. And I mean, it was just emotionally draining to me. And because I just hadn't experienced it at that rate. But yes, I did many times say, what did I do? And that was what made my decision hard, because I thought, here I am doing something I like, something I really, really enjoy, and I'm going into something totally different. And the same thing is true when you go from being in any of the school positions like teaching to principal. And, I always hear this statistic too, that like 49%, and it probably is higher actually this year, this is about 3 years old, of principals want to leave their jobs. And it's because of lack of mentorship. A lot of times, especially the schools where I go that are little and they have one person, no assistant. Usually they came straight from a classroom. They didn't have training, but it's a totally different skill set. You go in and you're a teacher and you know your content, you learn kids, you learn strategies. Well, then as your job as a principal, all of a sudden you've got a whole building. You're also HR, because you're hiring teachers. And in my case, like at Plainview, we had over 123 teachers. And so all summer, that's all I did was interview, and we were required to interview 5 for every position. So and it was very common to have 20 positions open, because I always had a group that drove from Lubbock. And if they got jobs in Lubbock, we'd lose them. Someone would retire. So that, and you're doing that, and then all of a sudden you walk in and, they'll say, oh, the roof's leaking in part of the building. And so you're in charge of a building as well. And so that's quite a transition.
Well, yeah, because, being a principal, you're running a business at that point.
Yes. Yeah,
you're running,
I didn't mention
you're
that.
running,
Yeah.
And so you have this massive infrastructure on top of the people that it's
and the budget. And budget too, Lisa.
Budget, facilities, HR, staff, your students, you're responsible also for the cultural climate of your
yes
school. You are truly the head cheerleader. When you're
right.
You set the tone for in every school. Yes, they're like for Plainview, like there's Plainview, but every school has its own unique microculture, and the principal sets the tone for that culture of their building, their staff, their facility, it's this micro infrastructure. It's a huge responsibility. My sister is a superintendent, so
right.
I hear all
you
I hear
it.
stuff. Oh my gosh, yeah. I also wanted to be a teacher, and I went into special ed, and I went to Texas Tech to get my degree in kinesiology. But after my student teaching, I thought, this is not for me. I went home. I went home in tears every day.
Yes.
And my mom's like, okay, you're 20 years old and you are too young to have a nervous breakdown. So you need to find another profession.
That's right.
I just wanted to ask, those 120 kids your freshman year, were you kind of like the Michelle Pfeiffer in that movie, Dangerous Minds?
Well, Michael, when I started, I really think of all of the years in Plainview. Y'all know I went to school there. Then I went to Tech. Then I came back and was there. Somebody asked me the other day, I was standing and talking to an adult in a school, and she goes, oh, you're from Plainview. You're Plainview High School. She said, were you there when? And I said, stop right there. I said, because I don't care what you say. The answer is yes, I was. I said, because I was there forever. But what was really hard, me being in that disciplinary position, Plainview had a lot of gang problems back at that time. And if y'all remember, like bad situations. And so that we were trying to deal with that mentality along with other things. And that I learned a lot, and but that's what makes me kind of think of like dangerous minds. Yeah, that's and some schools. I certainly don't see that like I did. That was back in early to mid '90s. When by the time I did that, and mid '90s. It's the worst I've ever seen Plainview be, and people a lot of times don't realize it's way better now.
Oh
It's
yeah,
still,
my mom told me. I mean, she still lives a block away from the school, and she told me. I
oh,
think it was the '90s or the 2000s when there was a drive-by at the
yes,
school. So I'm not sure if you were there or not, but
I
yeah, she
was. That was my
remembered. So,
first year in
oh,
administration.
speaking of first year, you recognize this photo?
So,
You recognize that photo?
well,
Aw.
That
what
was
a
your
baby.
that was your first year as a
It
principal.
was.
'Cause
Well, I couldn't even remember. I thought that's a yearbook photo, but I couldn't even remember. I wouldn't have been able to tell what year.
well, that's the reason I asked you when you
Yes.
started, because I was going
Uh-huh.
through the annuals trying to find and then boom, there it is. That was your
There it is.
first years. You look
So,
at
were you ever afraid during that time period?
Um, Not really. I was fearful of. I think, Lisa, I was just more sad because, and see, even my last year in the classroom, I had a student that died, and it was through being stabbed with a fight. It's like the end. Then came the drive-by. Then there were other things in the community happening where it was our kids. It was these kids that you think they're going to spend their lifetime in jail, because of things happening. In fact, I don't know. Maybe it was just because I was too dumb to know that. But I always laughed because every year I was principal, we have to go to training, and it was like takedown training, like where you have to restrain a kid. And so I'm going, and y'all, if it's a 4-year-old, that's one thing. If it's 18-year-old, really, really mad guy, then that's something else. And so they had us do that all the time. And one of my assistant principals, I remember, you have a team. It's a team of 2, and we're supposed to restrain this fighting person. And that's the only way you can do it. And it goes back to special ed. If there's special ed, which that's normally who has to be restrained, and you don't use this technique, you're open to lawsuits. But anyway, they had us practice, and we had him bent over, and he had 2 female assistant principals, one on each side of him. And so he's cooperating. Well, all of a sudden he goes like that and picks both of us up. So it's like, it's not. But when I retired and went in the first school that I was going to work in, I was standing in the hall talking to their assistant principal, and a fight broke out in the hall. And my first reaction, though, was go to it. And I thought, I don't have to do that anymore. I can turn and walk off, So it is. And I do see a lot of this happening. In fact, last week I was in a class. It was a special needs behavioral classroom. And this little girl, her teacher was talking to me. I talked to her on the phone the next day about her lesson. And I asked her what you just asked me. I said, are you afraid? And she said the same thing. I'm afraid for other kids. Sometimes because I'm responsible for these kids. And her situation was all these kids, again, special ed, Lisa, she had like 6 or so kids, and they almost all had one-on-one assistance, but a bunch of people were gone that day. So there were like only 2 people in there, and one little girl that was, she was a 6th grade girl. And I'm pretty sure she was sixth grade, but I walked in and she got right in my face and she smiled and she sat in my lap. And the teacher said, and then she gave you that hard hug. I said, you called it a hard hug. I called it a headlock. And I said, but I told her, I said, and she liked it because I said, I don't get freaked out easily. And I said, but that kind of did because she was so strong. So strong. And so you go into that and they're prepared. They're prepared for it. But I also had a wonderful special ed teacher. Well, I won't go into all of it, but he was talking the same thing about fear. He said the teachers, and some of them say, well, what if I get hit? And he said, I don't think you'll die. And I always laughed. I always tell myself that walking in. But I think because that's kind of my philosophy. Like, you know what, we'll deal with it if it happens. But I will say that those are few and far between. And there's just so much more security in schools now. And really, to tell you the truth, we've always needed it. Plainview High School, you talk about, nobody really understood this because they would say, well, we're going to lock the doors and people can't come in. Well, and they've got a system now that works well. You go in, you check in, but we're talking like over 30 doors to the outside. And, you're going all across parking lot to the band hall. You're going. And so it's just a big management. But every school I go in now is really very conscientious,
Well, I wanted to ask, when you were a principal, let's get a little more positive. What good things did you implement? Well, you were a principal, so besides the credits for the 120. I can't say dumbasses. That's not the political.
No,
I'm just kidding. But anyway, what were some of the cool things you implemented?
Okay, I'll tell you some of the things that I was proud of doing. They're still
doing it. So I'm sorry.
Okay, and some of these, to tell you the truth, I don't know if they still have, but one thing, because and I remember this one forefront because it took 10 years to get it. All those times when I was an administrator and we would go to all the football games out of town, I would see schools that had an ROTC program. And so I would say, we need that. They do poster colors and everything before the games, and they do competitions. And so I did some research. And I talked to the staff about it, and I'm going to tell you, Coach Danny Wren, he was instrumental too. He helped me to write the applications. He said that would be so good for our kids. And, for another whole group of kids that may not have, because y'all know how it is, you are connected with what your interests are and what activities you do in high school. That's
right.
What can make or break you. Well, I applied to every branch of the military, and I got a letter saying they were closing all of the ROTC high school programs due to funding. And so they were closed. They closed down all the funding for 10 years. And so people would come. I had to dedicate space for it. We had to come up with plan, personnel, everything that goes along with that. But I wouldn't give up my space. They'd say, well, that we don't get ROTC, so can we use this room? And I said, no, we're going to keep it. Well, as soon as the Department of Defense opened it, the applications again, I applied again to every branch of the military. And I told everybody, the first one that calls is getting us. And it was the Navy. And I laughed. I said, wow, the Navy in Plainview. And so they are former military officers. And so he called, I was talking to him, and it was during the summer, and he said, I'm interested in teaching and implementing the program. And I said, have you ever been to Texas? He was calling like from California. And he said, yes, I have. I've been to Austin. I said, well, think of Austin and think opposite. This is not, I said, we have a duck pond. That's it. And, but anyway, when I studied, the curriculum's the same for everyone. It's been great, and lots of kids. The right before I left the high school, they had a girl, and I'm sure they've had many more since then. Um, I could tell you so much. She just came from a very deprived household, and she ended up with $100,000 scholarship to A&M. And so,
Wow.
Wow.
Awesome.
that the freshman center that we did, that was a good thing. That helped so much with discipline, because it never was good to have 14-year-olds, an open campus, 18-year-olds, everybody free for all at lunch. That never was good. So that freshman center gave them a more sheltered transition. So that was another thing I liked. But two things that I went to the board with that they didn't approve, but they have now, and I'm so thankful. One was soccer, because I thought Plainview needs soccer. And we had a lot of kids. They'd bring their soccer ball and go play during lunch. And so what I did, I put those kids in ag, and I talked to their ag teachers, and they let them build soccer goals, and they would go out and play soccer. And now years later, they do have it, and that, I think that's been really good for kids too. But anyway, I think those are the biggest. But I just, everywhere I went, I looked for ideas, because kids have to connect, and you have to keep changing things to keep interest.
Yeah, I mean, you've been through so many generations. We're Gen Z, you've been through Gen
Yes.
X, millennials. You've been through
Right.
big, and each one of those generations has huge cultural shifts.
Yes.
And different interests, and the way they relate to each other. Even languaging is so different in between those different generations. That's really wonderful.
Yeah. Now I want to ask now, like Andrea Hayes Hooper, she's from our class. So how does it feel whenever you're principal and you taught some of these kids and now they're working underneath you? How did that make you feel?
Let me talk about Andrea specifically, because I can do even better than that. Through the end of my high school years and all the way through college, I'm sure this was high school. It was one of my first years. I was a manager of the swimming pool out at the old Westridge. And so I taught swimming lessons, 3 sets every day. And Andrea, her brother, and her sister, I taught all of them to swim when they were little kids. I mean, they were younger kids. And so then, she was in high school. I knew her in high school. Then became, Flo, it really, it's like people grow up and they're different, but they're not. It's the same way with me and with Margaret Berry, because she taught me. She mentored me. I was in her classroom, and one of my favorite things to do as principal, I'd walk into Margaret's class, because she taught for so many years and was so effective. I'd walk in her class, and visit and see what they were doing, and then I'd tell her kids. I said, "Do you know I had detention hall one time in high school?" And Miss Berry gave it to me for talking. And they loved that. And so she'd say, "Don't tell them that," and so I'm sure it was sort of the same thing, but we went straight from that. And the same thing with Andrea, because I had respect. She was a really, really good teacher. And they're real proficient at what they do. And I guess you just relate on a different level,
Yes, absolutely. We're almost at the end anyway. So
yes.
Yes, I mean this segment goes pretty fast. When it came to discipline, when we were there, we got licks. I mean, we got licks, but I know eventually that went away. Would that become a law, or it was just more liability that you get teachers stopped because of the liability?
Right. You know, some schools for a long time, they kept up with it. And I mean, they kept using SWATs. They call them SWATs, but they didn't ever look like SWATs to me. And I'll just tell y'all know my background is child development, and that's really contrary to child development on especially on high school kids. And so I they had SWATs before, but now the principal that came before me, he did not. I mean, it's not like he banned it totally, but they really discontinued using SWATs. And the I'm trying to think of how it was. All right, so when I was there, all the teachers knew I didn't like that, and I said, if it's well, then. Oh, I can't remember. They were wanting to re-implement. And I said, but here's the thing. I said, if it worked, you wouldn't have to do it but once. I said, it doesn't work because I know too many kids that would say this, you're going to detention or you're going to ISS. Can I just take SWATs? Well, what's that telling you? That's what they want. And, anyway, so what I did in ISS, that's kind of another change, but we used it, and we also had a progression that you couldn't just keep on this merry-go-round of going back to ISS all the time. I changed it from 3 days to 1, but we extended that day, and they had to come like at 7:30, and then they left at about 4:30, and my 2 teachers split up that time. I said, we're going to make it 1 day, but it's going to be a day they don't like. And so the parents sometimes would call and say, my son's got to get on the bus. They can't stay after school. And I'd say, that's fine. They'll just have 3 days, the regular time then. Well, let me check. Maybe I can find somebody to pick them up. And they always did, but it's not a law though, Michael, to answer. It may be now. It was not at the time. I virtually never ever see it. So some of the little schools really held on to that, and they just, and it's easier on everybody. It's over with, but anyway.
Yeah, but I love that philosophy, Lisa, because I am a firm believer that violence doesn't teach lessons, it teaches fear or rebellion.
Right.
And as educators, we're there to teach lessons and to help children. At 18, you're still a child. I mean, let's face it, developmentally, you're still a child. The role is to grow these kids so that they have a chance at success.
Yes.
And I don't know, physical punishment to me it's just a form of violence. It has no purpose.
Right.
No purpose in the education system.
Well, I have no comment.
I never got licked, so
me either.
I received 5, and it was all in 7th grade.
Oh, right. Yeah, 7th grade.
I have one hand. So, Lisa, we only have time, probably a couple of questions. Lisa, Nolan, and once you ask one more question, now I'll ask the last one, then we'll say goodnight.
What has been, in all the years and all the roles that you have been in, what has been either one experience that just really melted your heart, or what has been the most rewarding part of your tenure as an educator? Either question.
Oh, well, what I'm just going to say this, but it's happened to me several times that because I get so humbled, even when I saw some responses to being on this show, it's just humbling to think, because but this has been, maybe it's less than a year ago, and a girl that went through the high school, and she said, Miss Kersh, I just want to know, I was in a situation that I was going to drop out of school. I had less than a week left in my senior year. And she said, her situation was, she said, I couldn't make it. She said, and I talked to you, and she said, you said, give me 1 day. And she said, and so what I did, I just got, she had a child that she didn't have daycare for because her grandmother had kept it, and there wasn't anybody in that family that could help. And so that was one of my last years of teaching. And so I got resources all together. And she said, "Do you remember that?" And to be honest, I've had so many kids and so many, I said, and I told her, I said, "Let me tell you," I said, "I don't remember the exact situation, but it is something I would have done." And she said, "You did it." And she said, "I would have never graduated from high school." And then she said what she did. And that's happened several times, is that, I've had kids tell me, share with me things in their life that they were just on the edge. And I feel like I was able to impact that. And so it's not just one thing, but several things that make me think, there's a reason I had that in my head, that I was going to be a teacher from the time I was a child. And that's why I'm still doing it now, because I just enjoy it. And I've enjoyed all the variety of roles too. So anyway, thanks for asking that. Yes.
When you finally retire and people say Lisa Kersh or Mrs. Kersh, what do you want them to think about you or say about you? What do you think?
Okay, that's a good question too. What I would like for them, I'd like for them to remember a positive, how I made them feel about themselves, that I made them feel better, that I made them feel seen and important, that it didn't matter who they were. It didn't matter where they came from, who their parents were, what they were. I hope they know that I loved them for what they were and who they were, because that's true. They're, one of my students the other day, actually my teachers at a school, I was praising her because she's having some struggles too. And she's a teacher and in middle school, and her sixth graders walked out and I said, "Oh, you have such a great rapport with your kids." And she goes, "Oh, they're my babies." And I said, "And guess what? Y'all are mine now too." It transitions, so, but when you just have a heart for that. So great question.
Well, good. Well, our time is up. Well, thank you, for coming on.
Thank you.
This was a lot of fun. Lisa, do you want to say anything real quick?
Yes, I do. Just listening to you, I mean, your career has been really inspiring. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of people when I say this. One of the things that I think has been a consistent for you, even though I only knew you when we were in high school, but, you made kids feel safe. Like you said, seen and heard, but that you created a safety. You were relatable. You were approachable. I think kids really trusted you, and they knew inherently that you sincerely cared. There was a level of authenticity that just conveyed in the way that you carried yourself and the way that you interacted. And so, you had this really keen ability to build relationships with students. It didn't matter if you were 22 years old or 42 years old. It didn't matter. That's been your gift, Lisa. I really believe that. And the other thing I think has been part of your success is that because you are, you're a West Texas girl, you can relate to people's experiences. So, you've been there long enough that, if it wasn't like you're coming from California or like you said, or Austin or whatever, you were relatable because you were local. And people knew that. And, it's just been really inspiring. And I'm just so honored that you were willing to come back and share a lot of your story with us and our viewers.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
it's been fun. It's been a great pleasure for me too. So thank you. And I love what you guys are doing. I love it because it's growing. It's my son was asking me, he goes, "No, this goat knuckle, where did that come from?" And I said, "Well, he knows, of course, Aunt Paige." And I said, "I remember she and all her friends said that and all that." And he goes, "Does that mean," and he has a 7-year-old son. I said, "I know what you're going to say. Does it mean someday there's going to be a show called?" I said, 6, 7. He's got the. I said,
There you go. There you go.
So there you
Hey,
go. And
tell them I'll
grandson,
invest in that.
well, what's funny, my grandson Callahan, when he was here last summer, somebody said, "Well, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And he said, "I want to be a YouTuber." And so there you go. You know, you
Yeah,
may
right.
have an intern.
Well, Miss
That would
Lisa,
be
thank
great.
you so much. And what I want from Christmas from you is to come back on the show when it's time to hang them up. Like to come on, and
Oh yeah.
of course, you're gonna tell your boss and things, but we'd love for you to come on and say, hey, you know what, and bring a few people with you. It'll be
So,
fun.
Yeah,
so
I would
there
like
we
to. I would like to do a Lisa Kersh roast.
Oh, there
What?
you go.
Well,
Yeah.
like a real roast.
A fun roast where we bring people, that you've touched, students, teachers, people that you've worked with in your current role, just like from different factions and different time periods of your life to come and
Yeah, we might
share.
have to go there and do it live.
That would
That
be
would be
awesome.
great. And at the end of this year, I'll be 48. And my regional supervisor from the Texas teachers, he and I were talking. I said, we'll see. We'll see what it's like in a couple of years. That might be time to look for something else or
There you go.
do that. So you bet.
Well, again,
Okay. Well, thank y'all.
thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's.
You
And
too.
Yes.
you keep take care, and then I guess stay warm. I assume it's getting cold up there. So
Yes, it is. All right. Good to
Good
see
night.
y'all again.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
That was cool. I like that.
Oh, I just adore her. I
Yeah.
adored her when we were in high school, and I feel the same way now.
Absolutely. But I still believe in spank on the shut move.
No.
Just boom.
Nothing. No. No.
Should bring that
No.
back in. Everybody will probably say they'll concur what I just said.
No. You're gonna agree with me.
Well, it's great. It's great to have you back. It really was. It is.
Thank you.
I hate doing that one show by myself, but I kicked ass. But no, I'm just kidding.
I'm
But no,
sure it was great.
yeah. But next week, guys, we're gonna have a regular show and an STS. The regular show will feature James Porch, and these guys are from class of '77. Greg Bassett and Kelly Brown, and also a special guest with them will be Mr. Danny Andrews. He will be on the show, and then we'll have another STS 30 on Thursday with Cash Terry.
Terry.
He was in the group year and a half ago when we expanded outside of our class, and there were him and a few other classmates were the first ones that we had on our episode. But he is a mountaineer. He loves to climb mountains, not hills, mountains.
Mountains.
So we're
Yeah, he's in a whole class
absolutely
that I couldn't even touch.
Yep.
I've done 114er, and that was plenty.
Well, go get some rest, Miss Lisa. Well, hey guys, we'll see. We'll see you next week.
Yep,
Peace and
and
love.
I'll be
Peace and love.
harboring gear for after my surgery tomorrow.
Oh
so.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, everybody, let's pray for Miss Lisa for her surgery and it goes well and she heals quickly. So anyway,
Thank you.
everyone, good night. Bye bye.